The honourable member for Surrey North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise once again to call on this government to act now to address the gang violence that's happening in my community of Surrey. Crime levels in Surrey have been reached crisis levels, Mr. Speaker. There are 27 shootings in the past 2 months. I've stood in this House numerous times, multiple times in the last number of weeks, demanding that this government take action on the issue, and I still have not received any concrete answers or commitments from this government. Mr. Speaker, people come to Canada because they want to give their children a better future in a country that is safe. It is simply unacceptable that there are communities in this country where parents are afraid to let their children play outside in the case of a lone bullet. A first step in resolving this problem would be providing Surrey with the necessary resources to deal with the escalating gang violence, including youth gang prevention programs. Youth gang prevention programs funding in Canada is unstable and inconsistent. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I've introduced a motion M407, which calls on the government to provide stable, long-term funding for youth gang prevention and intervention programs. I hope my Conservative colleagues will vote in favour of this motion and work together to keep our families and children safe. I'm urging the government to work with us to find solutions to fix this alarming problem. However, Mr. Speaker, in order to find solutions for this problem, we need the government to be transparent about the current situation. Mr. Speaker, last week I stood up in this House and I had a number of questions for the Minister which weren't answered, and I asked the Parliamentary Secretary at that point to be aware that I'm going to be coming back in this House at this time to come with those answers. So hopefully she will provide us with those answers. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to hear talking points, but I don't think my people in my community want to hear talking points. Here, I'll repeat the questions again, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Minister, the Parliamentary Secretary keeps talking about $2.8 million in crime prevention funding in Surrey. The Minister says it's about $3 million. So which one is it? Is it 2.8 or 3 million? And these are the kind of questions I had for the Minister last week, and I hope she comes prepared. What is the itemized amount for the spending on the crime prevention in Surrey? What components are grants or contributions? What is the government's definition of crime prevention? Which departments were involved in spending with what amounts? Mr. Speaker, what I keep hearing from this government is the same talking point from the Parliamentary Secretary and the Minister, but still no action to deal with the gang violence program. The Parliamentary Secretary is also going to get up and tell us that they've brought in 30 new laws to deal with this. Mr. Speaker, and she's going to say, well, that member voted against it. Mr. Speaker, this crime wave is happening in Surrey despite those number of laws they brought in, Mr. Speaker, and they're not sufficient. And we've been telling them that you need to invest in communities, in crime prevention programs, and experts have been telling us in committee studies that you need to invest in crime prevention. Crime prevention pays. A little investment goes a long way. This Parliamentary Secretary is also going to get up and tell us that they've increased the funding for the RCMP. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is they cut the funding for RCMP in 2012 by $195 million. Now she's going to tell us they've increased it for 7 years in the last 8 years. If you increase it $1 million or $2 million each year, yet you take out $195 million, that doesn't, Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians can do the math. So I urge the Parliamentary Secretary to answer my question very straightforward. My question is not what the government has done or what the Liberals did wrong. My question is, what are you doing now in my community? What is the government's plan to deal with escalating gang violence? When will the government approve the 100 RCMP officers the city has requested? What will it take for this government to prioritize public safety?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day because I've responded to these very same questions again and again. In fact, not too long ago in the adjournment proceedings. But nonetheless, I'm very pleased to speak again and respond to the same remarks and the same questions which I've answered before to the member for Surrey North regarding the issue of escalating violence in the city of Surrey. And just contrary to what that member is saying, I'm actually going to stand up and talk about the facts. Over the last few years, our Conservative government has proven its commitment to protecting Canadians. That is why we have passed over 30 measures to combat dangerous and violent criminals. That's a fact. By getting tougher on crime. But I'm compelled to note that member, that very same member from Surrey, was not as concerned for the safety of his own constituents when he voted to reduce sentences for drive-by shootings. And here he is standing in the House asking about these very same things. Our Conservative government has put an ever-increasing focus on supporting intervention measures to prevent crime and youth gang activity, issues that are of great concern for all Canadians, but in fact, indeed, to the Surrey community. We know how important it is to steer youth away from gangs and crimes, or from crime and gangs before they get caught in a life of violence, drugs, and criminal activities. That is why, in 2008, we renewed and provided additional ongoing funding to the National Crime Prevention Strategy of $40.9 million per year. And again, Mr. Speaker, it's a fact. The issue of youth gangs continues to be a government priority. As the opposition member may be aware, as part of the National Crime Prevention Strategy, this government created the Youth Gang Prevention Fund to address growing concerns about youth gangs, with an annual investment of $7.5 million over 5 years. Mr. Speaker, again, this is a fact. What is also a fact is that the member from Surrey North actually voted against making the Youth Gang Prevention Fund a permanent program. And now he's standing up in the House and saying he needs this type of support. This program has supported, Mr. Speaker, 31 youth gang prevention projects for a total investment of $39.3 million in contribution funding in cities right across this country. Of that money, $2.8 million has gone into crime prevention initiatives in Surrey alone. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is a fact. Mr. Speaker, further to that, we are committed to working with the province of British Columbia to ensure that there are enough law enforcement boots on the ground to combat dangerous and violent criminals. And Mr. Speaker, again, the member stood up opposite, has asked for the answer to the support for the Surrey area. Apparently he wasn't listening the last time I stood up, because I'm going to reiterate right now again, maybe this time he'll listen, that I answered that question, as I said, in the adjournment proceedings not too long ago. We have actually approved the request that the member is referring to. I don't know what part he doesn't understand. I don't know what part he hasn't heard. I hope that the NDP member opposite will finally get on board with our Conservative government's approach to protecting Canadians, and I certainly hope that he actually begins to listen to the answers that I give him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Surrey North.
Mr. Speaker, I know facts are not something that Conservatives like to actually talk about, because those aren't facts, those are fictions. You can turn facts in any ways you want. The minister talks, the parliamentary secretary talks about investing $2.8 million in Surrey since 1970, or is it last year? Those are the very simple questions I'm asking, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, people in my constituency will see what the answers were, and they were not the answers that people of Surrey are expecting. So I'm going to ask the parliamentary secretary one more time, very clearly. My question is not what this government has done or what the Liberals did 10 years ago. My question is, what are you doing to do now to address this concern? The need is immediate, Mr. Speaker. We've had 25 shootings. It's about time that this government made some immediate commitments, concrete plans, and offer those to the city of Surrey, Mr. Speaker. So what is the government's plan to deal with this escalating violence? How are we going to move forward?
Honourable Parliament Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if that member's constituents are watching, then they've probably just heard that member supported against everything that this government has done to try and prevent that very crime and reduce crime right across this country. We actually have the lowest crime rate because of this Conservative government. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, our government has taken strong action to keep British Columbians and all Canadians safe. Again, that member is not really listening to the answers. He has gotten up and asked the same questions again and again. But that's just words. That's rhetoric. On this side of the House, the Conservative government has adopted a balanced approach to community safety. We have both legislative, supporting reactive, instead of just supporting reactive measures, we've made some significant investments in the crime prevention area as well. I've talked about those just a moment ago, and still the member has not listened, has not heard any of those things. But, Mr. Speaker, despite the opposition, despite that member from Surrey, we will continue to support all British Columbians. We will support the area of Surrey. And again, I am pleased to say, if the member has not heard, I'll try one more time. We did approve that request for the additional support. So maybe he's typing it in his tablet right now, I'm not sure, but that is the correct answer. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that when it comes to keeping our community safe, when it comes to keeping Canadians safe, it is this government, the Conservatives, that have taken strong action, both legislatively, preventative measures, and the NDP has voted against absolutely everything. And I think the constituents of Surrey, of that member's riding, actually know this is the fact.